Hello, hello, and welcome to the Color Whisperer Show, where we talk about all things home and healing. I'm Jeanette Chasworth. I'm your host, and I am the Color Whisperer. I'm here to help you with your home and healing. You can find me at my website, thecolorwhisperer.com. If you have any questions, I can help virtually as well as in person. And today, it's Lunar New Year, and we're going to celebrate it today by bringing in Reverend Debbie Grace. She is going to tell us all about the Lunar New Year and the dragon and what it means. And we're going to have a little celebration of our own. All right. So, welcome, Debbie. It's so good to see you.
Good to be back again with this transmission and space for sharing wisdom and awareness for those that are watching both live and also in the replay. Good to be with us again.
It is. It is. So, tell us a little. I mean, this is a very auspicious day. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, what I encourage everyone to explore is the realization that over 2 billion people worldwide consider today the literal new year. It's based on the lunar calendar in the Chinese zodiac as well as the Mayan calendar. And it has nothing to do with what you would call the Gregorian calendar, which was an artificial imposition of a very linear or masculine structure that was meant and designed to override nature's cycles. So the lunar calendar, of course, follows those 13 moons that we have every year. And it's celebrated, I think, in over 52 countries. And so those of us in the West, we don't necessarily hear about it as much because it's not as popular because we came out of Western Europe, predominantly here in America. And this lunar calendar is connecting the planet to the celestial bodies. It's the movement of the solar calendar and the rotations of the moon around the planet as it travels around the sun. So, like in ancient Celtic traditions, they honor those 8 branches of the equinoxes and the solstices and the half quarters. So, we just had Imbolc in Candlemas, which was on February 1st and 2nd, which is known as Groundhog's Day in modern times. And then pretty soon after, you have those celebrations. You have the Asian renewal of the turning of their zodiac signs. So this year it's in the symbol of the wood dragon. And yet, those of us that are also paying attention to these cycles of the deeper awakening that's happening inside of the heart of the human race, we realize that this is also the year of the dragon rising, which is that archetypal energy. So it's not just the Chinese zodiac. Therefore, today's Lunar New Year is being celebrated by all kinds of people that honor what the dragon symbolizes in the transformation of the human race, as well as what we've got going on in those Oriental countries. So does that translate how big today is? It's a big
Very
deal.
big. So, tell us two things. So, and I just want to get the questions in. But first of all, what does the dragon symbolize? And you said something that um, I only recently discovered in my world, but the wood dragon. So, okay, I'm a typical, very sheltered American. This was not new to me. Like my Chinese zodiac was I went to the Chinese restaurant and it said I'm, what year are you and what animal are you and that was kind of the extent of my knowledge. But until a few years ago when I learned about the elements in the dragon. So I would like you to explain what the dragon means itself, but then what is a wood dragon and what does that mean for us?
Well, specifically, let's ground that it's 2024. For those of you that study numerology, you're aware that there's this really big date coming up, February 24th, 2024. When you add up all the numbers, it creates an 8. So specifically, this is the year of the wood dragon in that cycle of that infinity loop or the Mobius or the figure 8. So the dragon symbolizes, of course, the auspicious regality of Asian royalty, everything that it means to be regal, which is elevated, right? Rising above the mundane, as well as holding yourself with poise and elegance and beauty and mastery, right? Royalty is highly trained for positions of leadership. So you have to have really high level leadership skills. And it beckons us into our greatness or our nobility, right? The ancient royal courts, like the round table. So that energy of affluence and wealth, particularly with the feng shui of the phoenix and the dragon. So it's the river of the life force, the kundalini, the chi flow. I know you've talked about this in other shows. The vibration raising, the frequency raising, and the dragon is gorgeous. When you see the New Year's festivals, it is this exquisitely colorful and just spectacular color and fire and this auspicious display of light and animation and all things that catch your eye with the fireworks, right? It's the dragon breathing its sparkling light. It's not just fire into its self-expression. So you're fully awake, you're fully animated, you're fully lit up, and you're in your finest attire, and it's red and it's popping with vibrancy and vitality and energized in its heightened expression. And then it also symbolizes the year of relationship, right? So the twos and the fours coming together, partnership and intimacy, intimacy with yourself, intimacy with a beloved, intimacy with colleagues and associates. So this is a massive year of manifestation, both with yourself, like the dragon can symbolize that soul awakening. The dragon can also symbolize conscious partnership coming into our lives. The dragon can also symbolize, which they literally do in Asia, all forms of wealth codes, all forms of currency streaming in for your projects, your dreams, your visions, and your endeavors. So in Asia, the dragons are the ancestors and the ancient ones. And you don't do any business endeavor without talking to your ancestors for assistance. And so in America, we've lost the richness of this cultural tradition that allows us to literally receive what you would call supernatural or spiritual support for our earthly experiences. So we could spend 10 hours on dragon and not cover all of it, but that's just kind of like the flavor of just how many just delicious and incredible things that the dragons bring to us and will continue to in years to come. This isn't just the year of the dragon. Oh yeah, that was February 2024. This is a landmark month on the planet. You can quote me on this. This is the turning point for also the animation of the dragon heart, which is that fire of the human spirit to rise up in freedom and liberty and sovereignty and claim our destiny or claim our dharma or claim that higher vision that we know that is our sacred calling. So it is very much a call to action today. And I know a lot of people, they're feeling it like the tremors in their bones of like, oh, I need to step up now. And I need to really step up now because it's time and I'm ready. We can get into the wood dragon next, but I just needed to just bow in honor and reverence and respect that the dragon nations are real. This isn't just like a zodiac sign. And I wish to import what you would call Eastern mysticism and Eastern ancestry and Eastern culture over here to the West. So it's like bringing the lotus, right, to the Western world, because the depth and the profundity of dragon consciousness is going to rock this planet into heaven on earth. I promise you that. It's like, don't mess with the mother dragon. And this is why, right? Game of Thrones was tapping into that archetypal level of the potency of the dragon queen. So there you go.
Reverend Grace, just really quickly, sorry to budge in here, but I had a question because I know a lot of people that love their Chinese zoology, and I mean, definitely astrology, I should say, Chinese astrology, and
Yes.
all in that space. But definitely, is definitely a lot of animals that are included. I know that I was born in '62, which means that I am the year of the tiger, and I know my brother was born in '69, which I think means he is the year of the rooster, if I remember correctly, and all along
Yep.
those lines. But there are some of the other ones that are out there that people don't necessarily enjoy being associated with, because I know that there is a year of the pig and there is a year of the rat and a number of other things that are out there. So I was just wondering your take on the animals that were chosen and why the animals were chosen. Because, like I said, you definitely like to be associated with a tiger, and I don't think my brother would mind being associated with a rooster. But there are other ones that, unfortunately, their year falls on
Well,
animals that aren't as loved by society.
all of nature has its gifts.
That is true.
And so, even the mouse, the tiniest of creatures, if you look at it through the perspective of the totem or the
Mhm.
spirit animal, every aspect of nature has blessings and gifts associated with it. So there's no like interpretation in the body of the natural world that this animal is better than that animal, because they're all a part of this one ecosystem. So the zodiac isn't meant to be like chopped up and like, oh, tiger good and oh, pig, see what I mean, is
Right.
associated with food, right? In this very mechanical and commercialized Western world. The Asian people do not have letters. Therefore, when they're learning their language, it is the language of symbols. Therefore, the Asian culture is in their right brain. Western culture has technically been dumbed down because they were taught to learn the alphabet in order to communicate, which then makes things very rigid and very linear. So if people associate rat, right, with ew, a dirty animal, or pig as food, they're in their left brain and they're categorizing by that ranking that they actually learned from capitalism. The Asian culture is so much more in their intuitive mind, their feminine, how do we say this in English? Um, Mysticism, right? Able to be with animals with more mythic connotations, mystical interpretations. So they're looking for, what's the clever fox,
Right.
right? Or I don't necessarily know the attributes of the rat, but being able to get out of sticky situations quickly, or,
Mhm.
the hog, um, being able to metabolize, right? What's being brought to you
Right.
universally. You've got to look for the positive attributes if you desire to find what the deeper meaning is. It's not a surface interpretation.
So,
Yeah, those cultures
Vivi,
actually have more depth.
Yeah.
I just looked it up. The rat represents wisdom, wealth, and prosperity. It is said to
There
be
you
the
go.
first animal that arrived when the Jade Emperor called the animals to appoint the zodiac signs. So the rat starts the 12-year cycle in some Indian cultures. Rats level up.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Nice.
I didn't know that. Hey, you mentioned a date, and you
Yeah.
said it was very important because of the number 8. And when I was looking up, because I had the pleasure, I went with a friend of mine because they used to work near where it's held at in one of our suburbs here in North Carolina. But I went to the Lantern Festival. I think it was during COVID, so it's probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And all along those,
Oh,
it
those are
was the most
gorgeous.
beautiful festival that I had seen with their performances. And I know that in some places this is more intricate, but it was one of those touring festivals that they take around and all along those lines. And they had some great performances and some great music. And of course, they had these amazing dragons that and other things that were representing the various aspects of Chinese culture. I've been wanting to go for years, and I got to go a couple of years ago. I think, unfortunately, they might have canceled it this year or recently, but I'm hoping that they will bring it back soon and all along those lines. But you said something about February 24th, and that is actually when the Lantern Festival is. So I'm wondering in some cultures and everything. So I'm wondering if that's accidental, because I just heard you mention February 24th. And then when I looked up Lantern Festival, it said Lantern Festival Saturday, February 24th. And I think that that's when it is on the international stage and everything. But I was wondering if they maybe did that intentionally, since this is a Chinese traditional festival and it seems like it's playing into your notion of that day being important and turning it into an 8.
Well, everything is code.
Mhm.
And numbers speak to us in code. And so the 224, 2024, 224, 224 is an auspicious sign.
Oh, well.
And specifically as it relates to this paradigm shift that we've talked about on other shows of sacred union
Mhm.
and divine harmony
Mhm.
and integrated balance. When we look at the masculine and the feminine, these are these two poles. And we're being invited into the awakened or conscious feminine and the awakened and the conscious masculine. So you have your human level of the human masculine and feminine. Great. There's baseline. Well, what happens when you have the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine? So you have to stack the twos on top of each other to get the 4, right? So the 4 is the 2 twos. And then we're dealing with the physical or the material plane and people that can see those numbers that are talking to us. Oh, this is spiritual, right? From the 2 to the 4, these are known as the master numbers, the 22 and the 44. And so you're raising your frequency from the regular or traditional 3D, male and female energies, and moving it into the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and bringing those together in that sacred alchemy or the divine marriage. This is the turning point for the rebalance of power on the planet.
Mhm.
And ancient mystery school traditions have given like these sacred memos to the psyche, to the subconscious, to the unconscious, to the superconsciousness, that this is that star date that we get to power up as a human family to awaken to our true divine nature. Is the activation code for bringing in the new true divine human. And it's the awakening of the transcending of the old systems that are based in competition, as we've talked before, and duality. So 2 also is a symbol of polarity, right? The haves and the have-nots, the day and the night. You don't have that when you move to the 4, right? You move into the medicine wheel, the north and the south and the east and the west. That's the transcendence of the duality. So it's the year of the 8, which is that infinity loop. And then it's the 2 into the 4. So that means that it's the synthesis of opposites, which is part of the gift of that grace, that alchemical grace, that quantum grace. We're moving into the quantum human. And that means that you have the material world as your foundation, and then the spiritual world that's merging.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was going to turn it back over to you and Jeanette and everything. I was going to just make a little bit of a slight joke because we were talking about Mother Nature and all along those lines. But the Chinese festival here in North Carolina is actually held earlier than it is held the rest of the year. So it's held usually in January and all in that space. But it closed earlier this year. So they did have it, but it ended earlier because of storm damage. So like they said, you can't mess with Mother Nature. So I guess Mother Nature was
Nature's having the last word.
was like some of these old last words. So that's what I was gonna bring that up because I thought you would get a kick out of that. That Mother Nature had the last word in all along those.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting everything you're saying about this being a year of great prosperity. And yet, if you listen to the news, there's all this, oh, we're in a recession, it might turn into a depression, all this doom and gloom about the economy. And energetically, we're in a very different space. And, if you put enough of that out there, people believe it and they take it into their soul and then they make it come true. And
well, that's their objective. That's why the media sources have been distorted to what you would call position a particular narrative. And those media sources are the 2, like I was saying before, the duality. They don't have any access to the 4 of the spiritual truth. So yeah, you have a human truth that's being basically manipulated by the World Economic Forum that wants to take over into digital currency, which is, as corrupt as it gets. And so the resilience is the power of the rising spirit to stand up to that control mechanism that's attempting to program humanity with lack, limitation, and scarcity because it's a story, it's a narrative, right? It's a perspective. But if you look at when you're on the movie set, okay, that movie looks really convincing because you got the camera angles, right? And you got the director, and they're creating this compelling invitation for everybody's personalities to go, oh, uh-oh, we're moving into a down current. And then that serves what you would call the World Economic Forum to get people to believe in that reality. So they're imposing what you would call artificial systems and seeing if people are stupid enough to believe it. I mean, no disrespect, but it's like, don't just accept everything that's, fed to you, because there is a hidden agenda in all of those media systems. And, Russell Brand is going public with Tucker Carlson talking about these distortions that the old systems of power are continuing to perpetuate. If you want to look at a laser of light, a laser of consciousness, that's your dragon. And the dragon's going to say, busted, you're a bunch of, conniving, brilliant liars, and we're not going to take the bait.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It's baiting humanity to see if they'll go into that, like, fear bandwidth. You look at different, frequency bandwidths, and that information is attempting to get your brain to go into a lower category. And so it is a form of mind control. It's a form of brainwashing. And the dragon spirit is like, I don't buy it. This doesn't feel quite right. I don't feel like I want to be looped into that scenario, because that's what they did with COVID. And, something smells, stinky here, and it doesn't feel authentic. So the wood dragon, of course, is connected to the tree nations, and that's what we use to ignite our fires. Like the wood burns, okay? So humans, it's time for you to burn, and burn bright with what we would call the infinity spark. And that's your internal divine authority that can see through the facade of the false matrix. Go back to what the Wachowskis said. Neo and Trinity transcended, right, all of those illusions because they were willing to see beyond the machine. And the dragon's like, oh, machine, I see you. You're not real. You're a hologram.
Right? The dragon pulls away the curtain, and just like there's the little man there, right?
And that takes the courage. The dragon heart is the courage to face your fear.
Yeah.
So, if you've
and
suffered
we all have fears.
financially,
it's human to have fears, but are we going to let our fears control us, or are we going to control the fear? Because, there's several.
Conquer it. Yeah.
And there's several different acronyms for what fear really stands for, but it's like, we don't need to, we've all been afraid of something. I mean, I know I have. And it's like, you feel the fear and you do it anyway. Or it's like, okay, this is a wall that's coming up to sabotage me. Okay, I'm not taking it. Right. And so it's conquering that fear, whatever that is, and saying, for me during COVID, there's a lot of fear about COVID. For me, I'd already had it. So I wasn't afraid of the bug, because I'd already had it. I knew how to do that, but I was like, I'm not going to be able to go into people's homes. What am I supposed to do? How, I could see the depression coming in. I could see the loneliness coming in. I could see a lot of the other things that nobody wanted to talk about at that point. Oh no, we have to save ourselves from the bug. I'm like, okay, but yes, there's other things here that are more dangerous than the bug. And that was, nobody wanted to talk about that because, we're so afraid of the bug that they couldn't see. Now you're seeing all these kids, all these people, it's coming out, all the depression, all these things that I was like, wait, this is what we need to be afraid of. Now all these studies have come out, it was there. And so instead of just, oh my God, I've got to clench up and be afraid. Okay, what are you really afraid of? You know, are you afraid of dying? Okay, well, what can we do to boost our immune systems? What can we do to become more healthy? What can we do? You know, are we afraid of dying because there's loose ends? Let's go fix those loose ends. It's scary. It's scary as hell. But let's go fix those loose ends so that we don't have to be afraid of anything. And so when we conquer what we're afraid of, they don't have any hold over us.
Yes. And imagine the dragon's capacity to fly and soar.
Yes.
It's not earthbound.
No.
Okay. It doesn't walk, right? Like a squirrel. It can fly. It can soar. So how can we fly above our fears? How can we soar above our limited belief systems? How can we rise to greater heights to transcend those difficulties? So there's a magnanimousness of our indwelling, a sacred tenacity, perseverance, and creative, playful ingenuity. The dragon will get out of sticky situations. Remember the legend Mulan? And so she's carrying that phoenix medicine, but she turned to her dragon ancestor to get out of the most challenging of predicaments. It's that intellect, that spiritual intelligence, which is so much of what I train people to be able to step up and meet those difficulties with new resilience and ingenuity. And so there's this primal fear of death. It's the core wound of the whole species. And if we allow it to be a guide into the deeper mysteries of the eternal nature of our immortal consciousness, then it becomes a blessing to actually do that dance, right, with the angel of death and see beyond the old connotations and associations of the end.
Yeah.
And there's all of these legends and myths that talk about the hero and the shero that has to go across the veil. What's the biggest topic right now on the planet? Near-death experiences. Everybody wants to hear about what happens on the other side. That wasn't the case 15 years ago. Everybody went like, oh, well, that's strange. That's bizarre. Now, it's like the hot topic. And so we have medical proof now, right? With like a Dr. Eben Alexander, heaven is for real, from a Harvard neurosurgeon. So if you'd like to see outside of the box, you have more opportunities on the planet than ever before. And can't you see the dragon taking your fear by the hand and basically saying, I'm going to take you on a magical journey and help you see the world through a different lens that's based in love. Remove your glasses called the fear lens and bring in the lens of your heart, the dragon flame, and bring in that camera angle of I'm going to look at myself and my life through the panoramic picture of love made real. And that's a choice and that's a decision. So to let the dragon consume and merge with you means I'm going to live a spirit-driven life.
Nice.
That's a really huge blessing, and the gratitude that we could have to these benevolent spirits that work with us both in the energetic realms. Dragons are real. We also have reports out of Asia that they have found the bones of dragons, and the governments kept that information hidden. So it's not folklore. The dragons are the ancient ancestors of Asian cultures. And that's why you have the stories that the emperor and the empress were half human and half dragon.
Mm.
And that was your symbol for I'm half of the earth and I'm half of the heaven and I'm this marriage of heaven and earth. And therefore, that emperor and empress isn't just now in Asian royal courts, part of my legacy is I'm one of the reincarnations of Empress Dowager Zhaojing, who brought the phoenix and dragon lineage to the Ming Dynasty. So basically, ancient Asian royal temple leadership. And what we were asking humanity to realize is that position of notoriety isn't just for what you would call the royal bloodline. And what was unique about Empress Dowager Zhaojing was she was claimed as the emperor's equal, but she wasn't, or I wasn't, of noble blood. He married me because my spirit is regal, because I was so intelligent, because I was so resilient, because I was so gracious in all of those attributes that he associated with presence and a regality of benevolence to serve and steward the people and be that protectress and guardian for a whole nation. And so it's the Cinderella story, from rags to riches. And, she was quote unquote nothing by social standards. And he saw the magnificence of her true inner being and took her as his bride and broke every single rule, right? Took me as his bride and broke every single rule. And so what that does is it invites each and every one of us to find that dragon and phoenix emperor and empress within. And that may sound radical, particularly if you've had a lot of abuse in your family system, or if you've had a lot of negativity beating you down and you've lost that self-esteem, or you've lost that healthy self-regard. What if, right, a fairy godmother or fairy godfather came in and said, see yourself through the eyes of heaven, see yourself through the eyes of love, see yourself through the eyes of Mother, Father, God, and remember who you truly are. So this can be, your year of vindication, folks. Wherever you have lost trust in yourself, call it back.
Reverend Grace, I had a question to ask you based on the show that I saw, and it was a great play and everything. But as I was leaving the theater, I thought of something that I had not thought about at the time. Sometimes when we name ourselves, we might be naming ourselves into an existence that is not what we want and everything. Because you had earlier mentioned how sometimes the things that we want, we might be not going after because we're thinking that it's not the shiny toy enough or a lot. Because you just talked about somebody that was basically, it's kind of the retelling of the Prince and the Pauper story, that they were thinking that the society was thinking that the pauper might not be as strong and all along those lines. And I know a lot of people, even in this modern day time, that are afraid to talk to the pauper or the working class person, the blue collar person, because they're feeling that is for a person that is less than them. And I think that is a total wrong attitude to have, and all along those lines and everything. But you got people that have that attitude. They're like, that's that plumber dude, I don't want to talk to him. Or that's that construction dude, when that might be somebody that is of interest to that lady. And the same for the opposite way as well, because that happens on both sides and everything. But what I was going to get to, and this is really the question I had, is when I came out of the theater, the name of the group was The Temptations. And if you follow the story, they went to a lot of different problems. They had issues with drugs. One of the members actually died of a drug overdose and all along those lines. And they just found very abandoned, that being one of the main lead singers and everything. One of the founders actually lost his son to a construction accident and all along those lines, because they were originally named like mini stars were, somebody and the whatever, like Junior Walker and the All Stars and other kind of things. But they wanted something different, so they called themselves The Temptations. And we know the temptation can be something that to exist and everything. So I'm wondering if that wasn't part of the problem. And like I said, you can't speak for what Berry Gordy and Motown did, but I'm thinking maybe that name might have drawn in some energy that they didn't necessarily need, and all along those lines. Not knocking the music, love the music, but I just wondered your take on that, because when that's literally what crossed my mind as I was going out. It's like, this was some amazing music, but y'all's title might have got y'all in trouble.
Well, that principle of what's your context and what's your connotation.
Right.
And there's the saying that there is no bad press, right? If you're getting attention, be it positive or negative, you can turn it in your favor.
Right.
So sometimes, the temptations, right? It can sound edgy, right? Like some people have fear and trepidation of the dragons because they're a powerful force to be reckoned with. But
Right.
how do you befriend, right, that trepidation? How do you repurpose that anxiety and make it work for you rather than against you? It's the same principle of taming a fear or taming a taboo or taming a negative label. You can go like, wow, you want to, label me in that negative context? Well, the magician, right, or the sorceress and that archetypal medicine wheel, you can play it to your favor. You can play it up and have this really humorous response, like a gesture, right? And actually have it animate a wider receivership of your message. So people have had to do that all across time and space. If you're dealt a lemon, make lemonade. And so, there's a lot of different opinions of, well, this is fortuitous and this is not fortuitous. But part of today is your luck.
Right.
And making things lucky is an art form. Can you handle being dealt a raw deal and turn it into something magical?
No, I was glad you said that.
That's the character of transformation.
No,
Of
glad you
being
said
able
that.
to take, a raw deal and turn it into something beautiful.
No, I'm glad you said that and everything, because one of the things that the founder of the network talks about, well, one of them, Kim Calhoun, is actually one of the founders, and I think that she even says that she comes from a bloodline, and I know you're talking about your bloodline, and I know Jeanette talked about her bloodline, but she actually uses that term that a lot of people don't like to use, which is the folks that are associated with folks from Salem, and she actually seems to think that she has some lineage to that group of folks, and definitely thinks that it is a positive and not the negative. So she actually flips around that use of that word and all along those lines, because a lot of people will use that word
Women
with and
weren't necessarily evil.
exactly.
They were scapegoats. It was the government. It was fear.
Right.
It was the church would take people. I learned this recently. So, and you go maybe not so much the 1800s, but the 1700s, the 1600s, 1500s. The women who were accused of witchery, they put stones in their skirts, because what happened if they were tried as a witch? Their children became indentured servants, and they took their property away. If they died, their children got to inherit the property. So a lot of women, so if the church had their eye on your house, which, I mean, we know, I don't know, Henry VIII walked into Hampton Court Palace and fell in love with it and said, off with your head, it's mine, pretty much, and so it was very easy for the church to say, oh, here's a property I like. They've built it up. They've done all this stuff. We want it. And they accuse somebody of witchcraft. And now it belongs to the church. And a lot of it was done by fear. Or, women can be very jealous. And, somebody looked at her cross-eyed. She had a period that day. She got mad, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why women can be very cruel. And so it was jealousy. It was, oh, I'm going to call you a witch.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that and everything.
Men mistrust of what you would call basic, fundamental, like Native American medicine man, medicine woman wisdom could also be miscategorized. So we're talking about how do you purify and clear today of all days false spiritual persecution.
Yes.
If you're being labeled something, right, and it's being done in a destructive format to steal or control an asset, seizing an asset, we've seen all of those misuses and abuses of power. So there's these smear campaigns, right, of the mob mentality. and they could be envious of those abilities. They could be feel inferior to those abilities. Well, why does she have this magical healing relationship with the herbs and the plants? And how come she can help the kids get better from their illness? And I don't have those gifts. So even the Christian saints were persecuted. So it's not just the witches. The saints were treated terribly by their own religion because a lot of the nuns and monks were jealous of people who had the true divine abilities. Are you catching my drift?
I'm catching your drift. But Reverend Grace, along those same lines, like I said, this was a very good week for me in terms of being able to have some amazing events. And this one actually was at the cultural center that I work at. But there's a young lady named Deisha Filion. I believe the book is called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. And she was there doing a book signing and all along those lines. I forget where she's from. She's not from North Carolina, might be around Maryland or something like that. But she was talking about how she got sent to church because, coming back to your point about churches and everything, and as a youngster, she was one of those, I hate to use the term, but sometimes I like to use it because it's a fun term. She was one of those smart aleck kids, the kids that would actually ask you questions and all along those lines. She wanted to know why she was going to church, but her mother and her grandmother wasn't going to church. And what it was that double standard that exists, because the guys in the church could do whatever they wanted, but these two ladies, who were both her mom and her grandmother, were divorcees. So the church did not see them as a positive asset and all along those lines. So they actually encouraged them not to come to church, but they would ask the daughter or the granddaughter, in the case of the grandmother, to send the kid to church so she could get the quote unquote indoctrination of the correct teachings and everything. But they didn't want the women to come in because the women were divorcees and they had that scarlet D on their arm.
Well, it's a label. It's a label and it's a judgment.
Right, exactly.
And so what we're focusing on is human empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And so the theme of this whole conversation of all these different categories is, how do you transform negativity into something positive? And we're not talking about categorizing the church, right? There is organized dogma and religion, okay, that seeks to squash the human spirit because it's a business. And if people give away their spiritual power, then they'll turn to an outside authority. So do you see the underlying agenda? We just need to speak to the real dynamic, not the surface symptoms. This is how you get the ancestral healing. If there's a hidden agenda that's created a hardship, see through the riffraff and go straight to the heart of the issue. And that's what you're going to use your dragon empowerment to transmute, transform, and transcend. That maybe is a hardship for my ancestors. I'm not going to carry that burden forward. And I'm asking for this dragon energy to come in and set myself free and also set my family line free, because these old sob stories, right, of loss and devastation and judgment and corruption and destruction, that's the old earth energy. And we're here to bring in the new earth energy. And only people that have their focus on what is truly coming down the pike, right, from the heavenly dragons. Kaira wrote the book, The Sophia Dragon Tribe, right? So a lot of people have seen the Divine Mother, right? And that white dragon. The Sophia Dragon Tribe is both the warrioress and the high priestess and the medicine woman and the witch and the queen and the tantrika. All of these qualities of what makes the divine feminine, right? Amazingly sacred. And these are attributes and qualities that must be cultivated. So I don't do sessions. People don't come to me for a healing. People come to me because they realize, oh my gosh, she is an ambassador and an emissary for birthing the quantum new earth. And to study with her is to study, right, with an ancient mage or a sage or a wise one. And those of us that have that drive inside of us to make a difference and create a more positive world for ourselves and our children and the generations to come, we're going to stand up and challenge the darkness on every single category, you know, and pick whatever it is that is your most passionate commitment to pierce that shadow with lasers of light and bring it into the garden of something incredible, out of adversity into self-actualization, right? That's self-transcendence. And it's a strength of mind, it's a strength of spirit, it's a strength of heart. It's also the strength of the body, right? Because you got to go on this epic journey of awakening, and that takes stamina and that takes fortitude. So can you feel they just gave us a through line, meaning the spirits that are with us? Like, see the golden path of all these different categories that all three of us have been mentioning. There's the golden road or the gold frequency that can guide us all into new realities, which we deserve.
And Reverend Grace and Jeanette, there's another part of that wisdom that is out there as well, and sometimes it's used as a division force as well. Because one of the other things that the author Phil y'all mentioned and everything was the importance of food in our society and all along those lines. But sometimes food can be a divisive force. Like I like to, well, I eat out way too much, but I also like to try different dishes. Like I might try some Indian food one day, some Japanese food, or some other foods. But there are some people that use that food as a dividing line. Like you can't be fixing chicken any kind of way. It's got to be fixed my way, or it's not the same thing. But you got some people that have their regional styles, and they are not going to have you prepare the food any way but their way. And that's even what she talked about, because apparently when she went to college, he was thinking she was fancy, and she was calling the food Neapolitan, and her mom was like, I don't know what that is. I just know that I like the food mixed together, and I don't like the fancy name that you're giving it, and all along those lines. But I was just wondering the importance of the food journey too, because that can be a divisive thing as well. Because sometimes people will use food as a division tactic as well.
Well, we have humanity in its lower frequency attributes. So we talk about this ego. Okay, only a human ego is going to argue about food. Let's just be honest. Okay, that's not coming from this radiant presence. So you have the human identity, you have the human personality, okay, you have the lower frequency attributes. They're going to squabble, right, around recipes and dishes. Okay.
Right.
One of the things that we talk about in the near-death experience is your end-of-life review. Okay, all things considered, get real. What do you think matters most once you've graduated, you've crossed over, and you're looking back on the sum totality of your entire life? Do you think you're going to squabble over cuisine?
No, not at all.
Okay, so people that are stuck in that level of thinking, okay, they're thinking very myopic and they're very small-minded, very, the heart, like the Grinch, okay, they have a closed heart, no open heart, right? An open consciousness would get caught in that argument. Now, to get involved in an argument, you have to say yes to participate in an argument. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can be gracious when somebody's trying to bait you into an argument, and you go like, okay, that's the trick of the ego. It's a trickster spirit, right? Jeanette and I just went to Prescott, Arizona, and studied with somebody and hung out with somebody who was trained by Pacifica Graduate University. It was started by Joseph Campbell and Maria Gimbutas and Hillman, in this legacy of mythological or mystical psychology and the study, right, of the human's heroes and sheroes journey archetypally. And so that would be a test, right? If that kind of a discussion came to you, the hero would see, oh, this is a trick to see if I'm going to go into a lower frequency, if I'm going to participate, right, in that mundane world. But the hero learns to rise above the mundane. The shero learns to see beyond the bickering, right, of that world that doesn't work. Do you see what I mean? That's what I mean by there's systems of conflict, right? You can smell conflict of like, are you just attached to having an argument for argument's sake? Or are you going to express your love for life and passion in acceptance and inclusion and flexibility? Like, So if the Asian royal families are gonna, pay for a plane ticket and have me come back, right? Because they recognize that I'm the reincarnation of, their royalty, and they serve me a meal that makes my stomach churn, okay? Because it's something I wasn't raised on. Do you think I'm gonna criticize their food because my Western palate can't handle those dishes? No.
No, not at
You
all.
stay
I
in
was,
humility and you go, thank you. And you scan the table and you figure out, go, give me the courage, right, to try something new here. Even if it tastes terrible, I'm going to put a smile on my face because that's being kind. And that's
no
being
doubt, no
considerate.
doubt, Reverend Grace. I was actually laughing because I ran across some of those people that you're talking about, those contrarians that like to debate just for the sake of debating, not because they have anything to say or to bring anything to it, and all along those lines. So I've run across some of them on the networking and other places as well, even in my own life here in Durham. So that's why I was chuckling, because I was going, yep, I'm running across those folks and everything. You mentioned earlier about the dragon being real, and I'm hoping that the Loch Ness monster is real at some point, and that folks will find him and all along those lines. Even though he's probably living in peace down there in the ocean, we've only researched about 5% of the ocean and everything. So hopefully the Loch Ness monster is perfectly fine, just like maybe the city of Atlantis is perfectly fine as well. But there is a major event that's going to happen in about 5 days and everything. So Reverend Grace, I want to know from you, because I've heard that this person exists and that he really was a figure of history, that he really was real and everything. Is Cupid a real individual? Is Cupid a real angel? And can Cupid actually get out there and find those love things? Because Valentine's Day is in about 5 days and all in that space. And I'm 62, still haven't got that
Mark's
arrow
looking for some
quiver
love.
and everything. But is Cupid a reality, and is Cupid a real figure, or is it a mythological figure that never
You
existed?
fun? Oh, well, hang on. I need to honor Jeanette for something first, and then we'll get back to that. One of the things that I love about Jeanette is she has a passion for healthy food, and she sees food with her connoisseur, right, as a source of medicine and wellness and well-being. And so it's our relationship to food as either a commodity or a source of, the sacred feminine would relate to food as she does, as something to nurture,
Right.
And appreciate the art of the cuisine, the art of the culinary skill sets, the art of baking, the art of pouring love into what you're making that then is being provided for the public. So through Jeanette's eyes, because I've experienced this with her, she'll take me to these magical places where they just love on the food in the kitchen. And when it's prepared to you, you can feel that there's joy and happiness, as well as really, really awesome, healthy organic ingredients. And so Jeanette has this little sniffer, right, of feeling out, yeah, these beautiful vibrations through the tradition of sharing a meal.
Yeah, no doubt.
And she quests it out, right? And I'm like, delegate to Jeanette what restaurant we're going to, because she'll find the gem. But she does that because she makes it a priority.
Yeah,
so you will find what you're looking for. Jeanette finds these pearls because the dragon has the pearl, and she'll find it because guess what Jeanette's looking for?
Looking for that pearl.
She's looking for that pearl.
No doubt.
And I love her dearly, right? She's a compadre on, shamanic quests with me, and oh, so much more. So, go ahead, honey.
So I want to go. You've touched on something a couple of different ways, and Mark brought it out in a very unique way too. But I wanted to really focus on it a little bit. We're running out of time. We'll go over a little bit.
Yeah, no problem.
But I wanted to. You talked about bringing the dragon to take away fear and to see the eyes of love. And this is an election year. There's a lot of hate out there, as with any election year. But I think we're going to have a lot more this year. And there are people in our lives that, we don't like. And it may that you hate, and you may have very good reason for hating them. And that hate literally eats you up inside. Whether it's a politician, a celebrity, or your brother, that hate is going to eat you up inside. So want you to talk, and then we're the worst haters of ourselves. I need to lose 50 pounds. Every time I look in the mirror, I hate myself. No, we have to. So I want you to talk about looking through the eyes of love and what that really means, because love is the ultimate gift, and you cannot like somebody and you can still look at them through the eyes of love, and you don't have to hate. You don't have to have that emotion stuck in your body. One of the things that we did when we saw the shaman was both of us purged a lot of stuck emotions in our body that neither one, I mean, I had a lot of stuff I thought I purged already, but like all this stuff came boiling up. I'm like, holy cow. And a lot of stuff came boiling up out of Devi. And it was like, whoa. And so you don't, it's like the boiling frog, you slowly get clenched and then you're like this, and this is the only thing that feels safe, and you don't know that you're even clenched like this until you start to let it go.
Let go.
Talk about how can we see ourselves, how can we see the world through the eyes of love, and let that dragon of freedom lead us.
Well, this is where we allow the archetypes to support us on our sacred pilgrimage. Cupid is also an archetype of Eros. Right. And one of the most ancient love stories on the planet is between Psyche and Eros. And it's this transcendence of these artificial barriers between what you would call the human and the gods. And so you can take the fire of freedom's fire, and see Eros as your dragon, your love dragon. There are love dragons, and you can call upon the dragon love force, the dragon love power. Hate is a decision. Bitterness is a decision. Lack of forgiveness is a decision. However, as Jeanette said, a lot of us are on what you would call a routine of inheriting bad habits, right? That the generations before us held, of cumulative resentment, cumulative animosity, particularly between the masculine and the feminine. And I'm just saying this inside of a transmuter box for the purpose of wisdom and education. We've been healing masculine hatred of the feminine, archetypally. We've also been healing feminine hatred of the masculine, archetypally. There's also this hatred of artificial or false power structures or power systems. So a lot of people actually hate politics because it reminds them of the corruption of all those negative stories we were talking about, those abuses of power by the aristocrats and, by the royal families. That's where you get the French Revolution, the atrocities, right, of the abuse of power. So love is only available to us through valor and bravery. So part of the legends that was represenced for Jeanette and I is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And these are the legends of the Holy Grail. And of course, Dr. Stephen Holler, who's actually a Gnostic bishop, actually goes into the academic mysticism and magic of these Arthurian legends. And so see that Pendragon lineage, right? Which is the heart of the Holy Grail, which is the descending of that spirit of true love and true benevolence that carries that Ho'oponopono spirit. That's Hawaiian Huna shamanism. Forgiveness is also an act of grace, right? Because what it means is you're willing to set that anguish free, because if we hold on to that angst, it becomes decay, right, in our own cellular bodies. So that's not condoning what's transpired, because you can definitely say, sorry, that's a violation of my core values. It does not resonate with my sacred principles and virtues. I say no thank you. to those decisions and actions and choices and behaviors. However, the whole ceremony of Ho'oponopono, which over in Hawaii is the water dragons and the Nagas, and all of this is real. You just step across that membrane of human disbelief, the human programming of negating that those other dimensions, right, exist. Well, they do, and there's the Nagas, which is the water dragons over in Hawaii, right? Aloha spirit. And this Ho'oponopono medicine, whether it's a wood dragon or a water dragon, brings the waters of the catharsis, right? Of the realization of that negativity put me on a trajectory of growth. And that catalyst of that negativity or that shadow can be forgiven because it also catalyzes us into our greatness, because we have a nemesis, right, that we need to push against so we can transcend and evolve. So this is in all of the great legends where your nemesis actually does you a favor because it forces you to transform and grow and evolve, which you wouldn't normally do if somebody didn't cause you great pain or bring in that experience of suffering. So I'm not saying that you're approving, right, of that atrocious experience. The dragon heart, even the water dragon, will say, I'm going to wash this free. I'm going to cleanse this free, because if I hold on to that animosity and angst and bitterness and rage or anger, it's going to eat up my dreams, and it's going to keep me stuck in that conflict, duality, polarization, and then I won't have the love energy flowing through my body to attract a new miracle. So if we don't let it go, if we don't surrender it, if we don't set it free, then we're all in our armor, and that won't allow the divine intervention. And every legend, you always have divine intervention. Well, can the divine intervention reach us if we're all shut down and clammed up? So we have to be brave enough to go like, okay, it hurts, but I'm going to trust, right? Multidimensional divine love to bring me out of this unpleasant circumstance and into something incredible, because that was the whole point. In the end of life review, basically, your brownie points is, did you choose love? Even in the face of fear.
Speaking of choosing love, apparently, I'm glad you mentioned Hawaii, because apparently we were talking about this on World Edition, which is our news show here on Pod TV, and the other founder, Nick Palvita, is of the opinion that the law won't hold up. But apparently, there in Hawaii, they upheld this notion that you don't have the right to carry a gun because of the spirit of aloha. So they were actually using that very peaceful atmosphere that Hawaii is known for to kind of rebuke this notion that people have the right to have handguns. So they were actually putting that part of the country in a more positive direction, which is, I know, the direction that both you and Jeanette feel that the whole world is going towards. So when I saw that, I was definitely thinking that was a positive news story in a positive direction, because it came from the Hawaiian Supreme Court. So they were definitely going like, no, that's going totally against our spirit of aloha and what we are about here in Hawaii. So they were definitely being more in tune with their spiritual gift, in my mind, and everything when I read that story and heard about that.
Yes. In Carl Jung's depth psychology or transpersonal psychology or mythic psychology, there's the language of the goddess. And one of the groundbreaking cultural traditions that she researched and brought to life was these civilizations that had no weapons. And she was an archaeologist at UCLA. And so she wrote about these love-based cultures that did exist on the planet. And UCLA tried to, laugh her as a, charlatan and facade. And Joseph Campbell recognized her genius. And he's like, no, this woman's telling the truth. If you believe that war is your solution, that's a mindset. It's a thought form. And we have proof that there's cultures and civilizations on the planet that survived without the need of weapons. And so the war machine goes like, what are you talking about? Well, they were so wealthy with agricultural endeavors, philosophical endeavors, artistic, right, innovation, that we don't have time for war. We don't have time for conflict. And the fact that she found the proof that these civilizations existed without weapons challenged what you would call the Darwinian narrative, that it's these ruthless, right? Nature is ruthless. The human nature is diabolical. No, at our fundamental core root truth, we are love. I am love, and you are love, and we are love, and that's true human nature. So that flies in the face of the war agendas that make lots of money when they finance both sides of the conflict. Incredibly brilliant if you want to make profit off of death. So do you see what I mean? The aloha spirit is, we're not going to profit off of death. We don't subscribe to that, aberration of the original human divine blueprint, which is love. And then you can find a Maria Gimbutas, who's now recognized as an academic giant, right, through Pacifica Graduate University up in Santa Barbara, that, yeah, we have proof that this isn't a fantasy and this isn't a fairy tale, that love actually wins. But if you don't know that it's grounded in real civilizations that lived on these principles of love-based culture, then it's just kind of like, an unreachable or intangible utopian society. It's not. It's actually existed, and we get to reclaim it and bring it back in a new way. Dun, da, da, da. And then, do you hear the dragons cheer? Like, they're figuring it out, Love is the greatest power. If you want to have the secret weapon, I highly, encourage you to find the arrow of love to pierce into whatever the darkness is. That'll work.
It will work. Most people, the only reason they fear dragons is because they're afraid that those dragons are going to breathe fire. But sometimes that fire is what is needed in life and everything. But there's that whole notion of the fire being breathed on them and destroying them, because that is the one great fear that people have of dragons. If the dragons are to pop up in the world, is that the dragon will be breathing all over the place.
Had my world being burnt to ashes and had to rebuild, but that's what it took for me to be who I am. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, and it's what it took for me to be strong enough to be who I am now. So sometimes there is a blessing in the fire. There is. It doesn't feel good all the time when it's being burned, but there is a blessing in the fire.
And part of these attributes, which is the golden opportunity that this discussion is inviting our listeners into, is dream that dream that's been dormant inside of your heart. The heart is the hearth. And yes, has there been negative black dragon lineages on the planet that are extremely violent and extremely destructive and extremely oppressive? Yes. Is that the end all be all of the dragon line? No. Discernment is required. As Jeanette and I have said, is there the misuse of the black arts on the planet? Yes, indeed. We don't have to go into fear, recognizing that those lineages that specialize in separation consciousness exist. The hero and the shero will be prudent and very, very sagacious and very, very clever when you're interfacing with what you would call those old energies of separation. It takes finesse, it takes resilience, and it takes creativity and ingenuity to be smarter than the darkness. Even if that's a black dragon. It does not mean that you have to go into paralysis and shut down. Okay, it's a formidable foe. Got it. However, as Jeanette said, you can wield that divine intervention and call upon all of your allies, right, in the non-physical world, and ask for, assist me right here, right now, to overcome this block, to overcome this challenge, to overcome this adversity. And for me, I've had to call upon both the phoenix and the dragon. For me, the dragon is more of that masculine energy, but I'm not talking about gender. The phoenix is more of the feminine energy. And the highest prophecy in all of Asian culture is the awakening of this original tree of life, where the dragon is in the roots and the phoenix is up in the branches. And when you have that reunion of the phoenix and the dragon, heaven on earth is born. It's one of the most ancient Chinese legends. And so it's that transcendence of all negativity is held within these two beloveds that are coming into consummation and conjugation inside of that original primordial tree of life, which is in every culture and every continent and every civilization on the entire planet. So the phoenix and dragon is part of that tree of life awakening, the great tree. Doesn't get any better. You have your Celtic version of it, you have your Indian version of it, you have, you see what I mean, the African version of it. These are universal symbols. And so today is that day. Tune in, tap in, and connect with that universal symbol and have it ignite your resolve to birth more love into your own life and birth more love into your communities and birth more love into your families and birth more love into this planet. AKA, this is the golden opportunity to be the change you wish to see in the world.
Hey, Reverend
Quite
Grace,
literally.
you're going to be in the change you want to be in the world and everything. I don't know why I've never thought about this before, but there was a friend of mine, and it's not that common a last name, but she did a lot of work, and I think still does a lot of work with folks in Africa and orphans in Africa, and definitely is in tune to a lot of the same things that you're in tune to, but is originally from the North Carolina, Virginia area and everything. But I was just wondering, and it's a long shot question to ask, but there was a lady named Mary Grace, and that is literally her name. And I know that Grace is your last name. So I was wondering if there's any possibilities that y'all might be related. Because a lot of times as you talk and I hear her talk, I'm going like, if they're not related, they should be related because y'all have a very similar kind of spirit and everything. And I think I met Mary during the times of some music events as well as being part of, if I remember correctly, the Occupy movement and all along those lines. But definitely, as you were talking, I'm going like, they have a very similar spirit. I wonder if they're related and everything, because she had done some work back in the day with some of the orphans out of Sudan and other places. But I just want, as I was hearing you talking, I'm going like, she's on the East Coast, she's on the West Coast, maybe they're related. But I thought I'd ask you, even though I knew it was a long shot question. No,
it factors into this sacred pilgrimage that Jeanette and I just took. There's this indigenous term in Lakesh, Wirikocha, Satnam, and Aho Metakuye Oyasin, all my relations. My oversoul is actually Lady Grace. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I am one of the manifestations of the ascended master, Lady Grace on the planet, who also overlighted, Mother Mary, who also overlighted Sophia. So like Jeanette and I are here because we're part of the same soul group. We're part of the same soul family. So are Jeanette and I blood relatives? No. Are we spirit relatives? Yes. So as you're saying, Mary Grace, do I know her? Yes. Have I met her in this lifetime yet? No. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Do I remember Jeanette before this lifetime? Yes. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? But that's multidimensional truth because I know Jeanette from other timelines. Right. And the soul is not singular. We have this soul cluster, we have this soul fabric, we have these soul families, we have these soul groups, and then you have this massive oversoul. So all three of us are part of the same oversoul. And that's moving out of that small individuality, that tiny self, and feeling like, yeah, there's other versions of me on the planet that are doing great work. And I bow to my sisters and I bow to my brothers, right? That are on the same frequency, love wave. And that's how Jeanette and I found each other. That's how Jeanette found you. That's how we, relocate each other again. I'm like, hi, good to be with you. Not our first rodeo.
Not the first rodeo at all. And I would not be surprised if you and Miss Grace don't find each other at some point or another. Like I said, a lot of times when you're talking, I'm like, this sounds like a very similar conversation that I've heard before and everything. And sometimes it was not as as intimate as some of these conversations are, because they might have been more surface conversations than our conversations are, but definitely y'all have a similar spirit. So that's what just crossed my mind.
I have this heart desire because I was physically staying at Jeanette's house when she was interviewing this other magical woman. What's her name, Jeanette? Eva. So we had this heart vision to have all four of us get together with you. So it'd be 3 women and Mark as the masculine pole, because I felt her. And, I was multitasking. However, everything that came out of Eva's mouth was, sister, yes, yes, yes. Like, check, 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 right? Spot on. That's a joy. That's a pleasure. And to find her on the planet through your broadcast, you see what I mean? The 2 of you have connected me with a soul sister that I didn't even know existed until I heard, your broadcast. So this is the synchronicities, right? We're finding each other because we're meant to, because we really do need to power up as cooperatives, alliances, and teams. And I have the highest respect for this woman, and I haven't even met her. And I'm like, I'm collaborating with her. I just get it. It's like coming in through the ethers, the love wave. Like, this is your soul kin.
We can't deny our soul, because one of the things, and I've never said this on Jeanette's show, but I don't know how much she watches my other shows, but the one thing that I do on the Online Dinner Party, which is the show that I do every Wednesday, and I realized that it was not done accidentally, and now I'm doing it almost intentionally, is that I invite a number of people like you would to a normal dinner party. Like, you may know them, you may not know them, and everything. But one of the things that I do at the end of the show is I give them a chance to share what they are about and how they can be reached, but I also give them a chance to give a message of positivity, because that's almost like my closing song. So there are a closing activity that happens. So in probably close to 200 shows, there have been 200 messages of affirmation, because that is, and probably more than that, probably close to 500 to 1,000, because I'm giving these people a chance to give a message of affirmation of positivity. Because like you and like Jeanette, I feel that we are in a changing pivotal time, and the best way that we can make this pivotal change is to continue to put that message and that word of positivity out into the universe. So that is something that I do on every show, on every Wednesday at 5:30, because it's usually about what time the show ends and everything. Because I'm thinking that is another way to spread the positivity, just the way that Jeanette does on this show, whether we're talking about interior design and we're also talking about healing, because healing can be both the healing of the house, but also the healing of our soul as well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We only have a few minutes left. I want to give you some time to last words, and how do we work with you?
Well, basically, I am a shamanic midwife. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not here to do the healing or the fixing of the problem. I am very much that spiritual guide for those that are ready to step into the embodiment of their love. Oh gosh, there's the little bells of my phone. Sorry about that. And what we were talking about earlier today, I don't know if you can see it with the glare. Oh, no. I specialize.
There you go. Divine Union.
In working with both the phoenix and the dragon together. And if you can see behind the phoenix and the dragon, we have this original sacred feminine and original sacred masculine, and they're all inside of what we talked about, that great and original tree of love. We're leaving the tree of life, which was born of, right, the split of the knowledge of quote unquote good and evil, and transcending that separation consciousness and moving into unity consciousness. So I am that galvanizing presence of how to bring more light into your body, somatic. These are your sacred soul initiations, your sacred rites of passage. Therefore, I'm the oracle, the sage, the high priestess, the medicine woman, and also that kick-ass leadership trainer that will get you in shape to fulfill your higher life purpose. I work with executives as much as I do, every day. Initiates. So we have the Divine Union Academy and the Divine Union Foundation, divineunionfoundation.org, divineunionacademy.com. And so this is those paths of transformation. I specialize in the Soul Intelligence Academy. And as we were talking about earlier, I love to collaborate with other gifted messengers. And so I do, Akashic readings and, soul activations and, mythic journeys, all that good stuff. Our true commitment, though, is to not work as an individual practitioner so that I am one of many, right? So that my gifts are complementary with Jeanette's gifts and Eva's gifts. And so we're really a sisterhood of the awakening of the human heart. Dun, da, da, da. So you can manifest your heart's desires. And we're a family, right? It's not just me, it's us, or the blueprints of we.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on. And
Yes.
This was an incredible day. I think we've imparted so much. So I hope you all enjoy your Lunar New Year. Take that dragon. See yourself with love. See through the eyes of love. Take that dragon and fight your fears. And let's all just take that wood dragon and all of us go into a great, successful year. So be it.
Aho, so mote it be.
Awesome. And one great way to do that is by filling yourself with healthy food, because you got to be clean on the inside as well as to feel good, right? And we do that with Can Do Spice.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.